Welcome. My name is Ofwona Draber. I am the Executive Director and Chief Curator of KODA. KODA is a social practice residency for mid-career artists. We do organize residencies, exhibitions, and arts education programs. And I would like to thank Cynthia Tobar for bringing the idea for the Arts Administration Fellowship to KODA. And thank you also to MoMA, Leonardo Bravo, and Eddie Almonte for generously hosting us for these final project presentations. KODA Arts Administration Fellowship aims to foster students' interest in arts administration. The fellowship is structured in 3 phases. There's the phase of knowledge acquisition, research project development, and research project delivery. Fellows have access to office hours, individual mentorship, and site visits. And this year we visited MoMA, of course, Visual Aids, Neue Gallery, and Isla. And faculty for the fellowship included Cynthia Tobar, KODA staff members, myself, and Elif Usuloglu, and Leonardo Bravo, Director of Public Engagement at MoMA. I would also like to extend my thank you to KODA's wonderful interns, Rita Kolkunova, Zoe Perlis, and Victor Lee. And of course, Elif, but I Elif twice. So today's program includes our 4 wonderful fellows, and we're going to, so the entire program is 2 hours. We might add 5 minutes, we'll see how it goes. But at 11, so now, we'll start with Chavely Reynoso, then 11:30, Jose Talaj, at 12, Jesse Miller, and 12:30, Aurelia Littlepage. So let's start with Chavely. Chavely is a painter, illustrator, just a brief introduction. A painter, illustrator, born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. She's completing her BFA in studio art and minor in museum and cultural organizational studies at Brooklyn College. Welcome, Chavely.
All right, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for this opportunity for us to present our research to you. My name is Chavely Reynoso, and like Klaudia mentioned, I am a studio art major at Brooklyn College, and I'm a proud fellow for KODA's Art Administration Fellowship. The basis of our research and our projects over the summer was to curate social memory through an oral history project. So it is my pleasure, and I'm sure my fellows' pleasure, to present what we've learned over the summer. It began, which to me was a really exciting trip to Governor's Island to learn foundations of curation, archiving, and I've never been to Governor's Island, so it was a wonderful experience, not only to like travel in New York City, but also to learn about, excuse me, the sort of like the back end of visiting a museum and what goes into putting artwork together. So I would like to begin with a definition that we learned in week 2 at Governor's Island from Klaudia, and that is curate. So I know we're at MoMA, I don't need to explain what curation is to anybody in this room, but I did learn that the core, the root of the word curate is cura, which is Latin for care, and that is in reference to objects, artifacts, and art and institutional spaces. But KODA's curation centers on listening to artists, asking what they need, and centering their voice. So in that spirit, I wanted to first introduce the neighborhood where a lot of my presentation and my conversation with my artist took place, which is in Crown Heights. It is the center where she does a lot of her work, is inspired, and it is a quickly gentrifying neighborhood, which will come up in our conversation. So to prepare for this presentation, I was interested in how art influences social change and how identity plays a part in that social change. I was also interested in how art can offer societal solutions, like how can artists, the art that they make, and myself as an artist, how can I use all of what's out there to inspire me? So overall, I think I was just looking for a call to action, and that was sort of guiding my research and how I'm gonna pick someone to speak to. And thankfully, I found that person, and I would love to present to you my findings. So with all of what we learned about curation, archiving, what we learned from Cynthia on the island about conducting an ethical oral history, all of that culminated and was exemplified by our museum visits, which was an amazing experience and resulted in my zine, which was a brief oral history of Mildred Beltré. This zine is a couple of takeaways from our conversation, as well as some of my favorite moments and favorite works that she's created. To briefly introduce Mildred, she is a Brooklyn-based artist living in Crown Heights, and her work is multidisciplinary. She is an illustrator, she makes weavings, tapestries, and sculptures as well. And she's also one half of the Brooklyn High Art Machine with Oasis Duvernay, her creative collaborator. And she, with Brooklyn High Art Machine, they engage in community-based art programming, and they bring art to the people that surround them and offer solutions. To begin, I wanted to mention or just contextualize that the art that I really loved from her was her series called Slogans for a Revolution That Never Was. They are a series of text-based illustrations where she takes quotes and she experiments with how we take in information and language. I really love this series of hers, not only because it's beautiful and colorful, but because of the complexity that she weaves into her pieces. I also really love the title, Slogans for a Revolution That Never Was. To me, that reads as an art prompt, as an artist who just needs a little something to get creative. That to me was like a really great starting point. And with that in mind, I decided to delve into the source material for this series that I loved from her so much. She first was introduced to this essay by Zora Neale Hurston through an artist called Glenn Ligon, where he was reading this essay that was published in A World Tomorrow in the 1920s by a person called How It Feels to Be the Color to Me. And in that essay, she describes how when she left her community in Florida, her race became sort of a standout quality in an almost negative light that had never happened to her. And so there's a quote down here that says, "I feel most colored when I'm thrown against a sharp white background." Ligon took this quote and created this piece, and when Mildred saw it, she came up with the first of many of her slogans for a revolution that never was, which I will show. And it just so happened, in reading this source material, I myself was looking for a slogan or a mantra that can sort of fit in the same category of what I was learning about. And up here, I found a really perfect excerpt where I got the title for this zine. It says, "Even in the helter-skelter skirmish that is my life, I have seen that the world is to the strong regardless of a little pigmentation, more or less. No, I do not weep at the world. I am too busy sharpening my oyster knife." And so that, in combination with the cover of its publication, I came up with the title of the zine, which is a little way of saying we can't be too much worried. We have to take advantage of what we can do and get things done. So to continue to show her work, this is a little bit of what it looks like. They are very beautiful, colorful, but kind of complicated compositions. And the focal point, or what the crux of what she is trying to do, is slow down the absorption of language. Usually when we think of a slogan, we think of a quick message, something for you to just absorb, think about it, and then move on. I always think about the Uncle Sam, like, "We need you," or "I want you for US Army." But instead, Beltre is kind of working with how language is taking in when you have to work for the message. Not simply just present it to it and then you move along, but actually sit with it and try to decipher it. In her own words, she said, "In working with language, I was interested in slowing down the way language is taken in. because this series is called Slogans for the Revolution That Never Was, is take that idea of a slogan and see how I can play with the way information is taken in, both visually and conceptually. Over here is the first piece of her series that was a response to Glenn Ligon's illustration, and these were the ones that followed afterwards. The second one is I feel most racist when I'm up against a sharp black, which is a direct contrast of that quote from Hurston. And the third is a quote from the movie The Help, where she was considering power and environment and how this character in a vulnerable situation was sort of making an affirmation and questioning what that affirmation was about. I really enjoyed her use of the source material because it kind of engaged in social memory. By her use of reference, she is keeping both the source material of Hurston's essay alive and also Ligon's drawings alive. To continue, this is one of my favorite pieces and also one that I think really exemplifies her motivation or her question to make the viewer work for what the message is. And my reflection on this was that the slogans were sort of like puzzle pieces. They're beautiful and you have to decipher them in order to get the prize. This particular piece is called Free Pussy and Other Political Prisoners. And she was talking about it in the interview and said, these older white women were doing that thing where they were trying to figure out what it says. And it was so funny. So she was watching people of different backgrounds go through that process of looking at a beautiful piece, trying to decipher it, and then sitting with that message. Her work, like I mentioned before, is multidisciplinary, and her series continues from drawings into tapestries, which you can see up here. And when I asked her about her process, it was a really comforting answer, and one that sort of speaks of just going with the flow and freedom. She says, lately my work has involved a lot of weaving and textiles, and I'm just letting that be. I'm not sure how it's connecting to the text right now, but I also feel like at some point they will join. Another thing I learned about myself and my process is that I think by doing. I'm like learning to kind of go with the way things happen, which as an artist is very hard for me to relinquish things to the flow. And so it was really a beautiful thing to know that someone with such a huge body of work who's successfully composing her ideas and her concepts together is coming about it in a very organic way. So now we're bringing the words to the streets, and this is the work that she does with her collaborative partner, Oesa Duvernay, as a part of the Brooklyn High Art Machine. Just to read briefly from the plaque, which is from a street weaving that she did for the Brooklyn Museum. It says, the Brooklyn High Art Machine was co-founded in 2010 by artists Mildred Beltré and Oesa Duvernay, and is a socially engaged collaborative art project based in Brooklyn's Crown Heights neighborhood. It addresses gentrification and community building through art making. These are some of the most popular pieces that they do. I took these after our interview, and it's two street weavings that live on Lincoln Place and Franklin Avenue. This year, it says, one says, it's you, me, us, them, all that exists. And the one across the street says, struggling upstream or drifting down. So in her personal work, where one has to work for a message, decipher it, and sit with it and do a little bit of self-reflecting, Beltre and Duvernay put their message loud and clear into the world, and it's up to the individual and the context of where these messages are located to kind of think about who they are in these quotes. One really exciting thing that I learned is that they're engaged in their own oral history project at the moment. They worked with the Met. They have a program called the Civic Practice Partnership, and they're making a book called Before It's Gone, Archive to Survive, which is a collection of interviews from their neighborhood, their neighbors, people in their buildings. And it's beautiful because before learning this, I always thought of archiving, and even throughout our program, archiving was sort of centered on artwork, artifacts, and keeping records. But this was a totally new way to think about archiving, is archiving people, and in a place where people are constantly moving, things are changing. I thought it was a really beautiful gesture to take time to document the people who live there so that they have their stories living and in history. One of the big themes, and I touched on it before, is gentrification. This is called You Discovered Nothing, Gentrifiers Anonymous, and it's a pamphlet based on Alcoholics Anonymous, and the group was commissioned to make something for this. This is a direct response to the changes in the community and sort of attitudes of people living in a place responding to all the changes that are happening seemingly without their consent or without their inputs. Because it was released a while ago, I was really curious to know if she had any amendments to it. Like if she were to do this today, what would she add? And her answer was that her biggest pet peeve right now is the restaurants that have people standing outside and the privatization of public space and how much of a nuisance it is to the people living there. And it just so happens when I was taking that video that I played earlier, I caught footage of people outside of a restaurant eating, and it completely blocked the sidewalk. So I was like, this is a pretty big problem. And it was in the middle of the day, so I could imagine on a really busy day, it might be super hard to actually walk through and get to your house, which she was talking about. And lastly, I asked Mildred about how to get started, because I was looking for solutions at the beginning of this, and I wanted to leave with some sort of concrete steps. And she mentioned that her and Oasis just started. They had these sentiments about gentrification, about the arts, and about what their community needed. And she said that she and Oasis started with tables sitting outside of her building with the supplies that they had. And for anyone who wants to do the same in their neighborhood or wherever they feel that there is a need for art in the community, just look at what resources you have. And I mean like broadly, resources. Is there a space that you think you can use, whether it's inside or out? What do you have at home? Both of us were teaching artists for a long time, and we have all of these random art supplies in our house. I have also been a teaching artist, and I also have a lot of supplies in my house. So this was like, it felt like a direct answer to things that I can actually feasibly do. She continues, you don't need to apply for some big grant. You don't have to wait for someone to give you permission or sign off on it or be like, this is a great idea. If you want to do something, see when you have to do it and just do it. And I thought this was a really awesome fence weaving from a couple years back. This is a dear friend where I am, so community. And before I get into my reflections, I just wanted to end and say that Mildred left me with a lot of positive vibes, a lot of inspiration, and just the importance of words. So with that in mind, I don't want to mince my words, and I just want to read to you my reflection so I can properly say how I feel about this experience and about everything that I've learned. So, on my essay application to KODA's Art Administration Fellowship, I wrote, my objective for the fellowship is to immerse myself in the program to come out a better, more professional creative, to be open to everything and absorb as much of the experience as I can to reach my artistic goals. As I navigate work while pursuing my degree, the KODA Fellowship would help fill the gaps in my knowledge and reinforce the foundation of my art-making process through the structure and mentorship it provides, which is a genuine gift for any creative person eager to rise to their potential. And I feel like I am very fulfilled in all of my goals. I definitely got all of that and more. I can attest with full confidence that this fellowship was indeed the greatest gift and has enriched me with a treasure trove of experiences that will continue to nourish my artistic career. I do not take for granted the priceless opportunities KODA has given us, from our mentorship with the amazing Cynthia Tobar, shout out to her, who shared her artistry with us on Governor's Island and gave us the blueprint for a successful ethical oral history interview, to the museum and gallery visits, including this very meaningful moment today at MoMA, where we all have a platform to share our little old selves in such a significant institution. I was able to see art I've never seen before and learn about it from the very passionate people who put the care in curators. During Cynthia's workshop, she asked us fellows to consider our why. I wrote hastily in my notebook about my concern with identity and community, especially in these turbulent times, and how I'm interested in how art has influenced social change. I really wanted to figure out how art, along with its curation, could inspire radical social change on an individual and societal level. When I found Mildred Beltré's work during my research, I instantly knew I had to talk to her. She was my top choice for this project. Her political and community-based works shone like a beacon towards the answer I had been seeking. To quote from what has been said about her work, Mildred uses humor to ask what it means to create a world free of sexist, racist, capitalist, and imperialist subjectivity, and what it takes to make a revolution desirable. It's exactly what I had been searching for. My interview with Mildred was an enlightening experience that left me much to consider and even more to explore. I left her studio inspired and equipped with practical advice to improve my art practice, as well as bringing change to my community through it. Above all, I left with a comforting confidence that I am on the right track. Like Mildred, I've also always had a real job since I was 13, currently balancing my family life, and have a scattered web where my ideas live in fragments until they come together when they can. Hearing how she embraces these facets of life instead of trying to change or fix it has totally reframed my outlook. If she can be superwoman in and outside of her artistic practice, there's no reason for me to keep my own cape bouncing on and off my shoulders. I felt seen in her experiences. I would love to connect with her and Oasa again and look forward to their oral history project, Before It's Gone, Archived to Survive, by the Brooklyn High Art Machine. Finding her work exemplifies how necessary curation is to inspire people. Speaking to her proves that there is more power in the human connection that community fosters. I'm so grateful for my KODA community, my fellow fellows, Aurelia, Jesse, Jose, for the sense of community, support, and encouragement, Klaudia, Cynthia, Elif, Zoe, Rita, Victor, and the awesome KODA team for the experiences, resources, and encouragement. May this contribution to your archives bolster it, and may our paths stay connected going forward. Thank you so much.
workshop, I think we were talking about our lives, and you were talking about how you had watched a TV show where they drew a hand or something, and then you fixated on it. And I just love, I don't even know if you meant to do it that way, but I love that there's the hands kind of subtly in there, because it's so full circle moment.
I didn't
so
even,
awesome.
I totally remember it because I had a lot of notes in my little journal sketchbook.
Yeah.
And yeah, I remember it was what got us into art and art administration, and it was watching this Bob Ross illustration type program, and the artist was drawing a mad scientist like this, and I loved that he had shading, something really simple and goofy. And I was I did this, it looks really cool. I'm an artist. So that was it for me. No one could tell me anything. So yeah, that was subconscious and very cool. I didn't put that together, but yeah. Also, drawing hands is hard, and I feel pretty happy with these fingers. So.
Is there more to the sharpening the oyster knife than just doing practical things instead of worrying about the larger picture? Is there more meaning there for you?
Definitely. I think sharpening would be all the answers that I got from my interview, the practical steps to making a change in the community, using the resources we have. And I think just a lot of what she said about going with the flow in terms of being a creative. In my personal practice, I struggle a lot with just doing things. I feel I have to pre-plan, sketch a billion times, and it often leads to just stagnation. So I think part of that sharpening for me personally is just relinquishing a little bit of that control. And in the grand scheme of things, in terms of serving community, is just a little bit of that too. Not being overly concerned with the lines and just doing what you can with what you have. So as long as some sort of action forward is being taken, I think that's what the sharpening of the oyster knife is. And just, the world is your oyster. Find a knife, a fork, whatever you need, but get to it and make what you can of it.